Good day, everyone. I am Jumah Al-Hassan at Itliong, and together with my members Andrei Osada, Jiro Gedang, Diane Loceno, Allyana Roraldo, Miguel Nazario, and Gonzalez, today we will be discussing the issue of corruption in the Philippines, specifically its causes and effects. We have identified several key issues. First, cultural tolerance, which leads to the perpetuation of informal practices. Second, oligarchy, resulting in political monopoly. And finally, lack of transparency, which contributes to increased impunity. I'll be starting the discussion with insights on the overall landscape of corruption in the Philippines. Afterward, the rest of the members will elaborate on the specific causes and effects we've gathered. Let's dive into this important topic together. Corruption continues to be one of the most pressing issues facing the Philippines, deeply affecting its governance, economy, and the overall well-being of its citizens. According to the Corruption Perception Index published by Transparency International, the Philippines ranked 115th out of 100 countries in 2023, scoring 34 out of 100 points, which placed it on the lower end of the spectrum compared to the countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Despite a slight improvement from 2022, when the country scored 33, the overall picture remains troubling. Based on an article by Raymond A. Abrea in the Philippine Daily Inquirer, the country's CPI score has fluctuated between 33 and 38 since 2012, with little progress being made in the fight against corruption. These scores reflect experts and business people's perception of corrupt practices in the public sector, including bribery, the misuse of public office for private gain, and nepotism, among others. Though these numbers are based on perception, they reveal the systemic nature of corruption that still thrives in the country. Our presentation today will explore the root causes, effects, and potential solutions to corruption in the Philippines, as illustrated by our problem tree. The first cause and effect will be discussed by Andrei Osada and Jiro Gedang. The cause is cultural tolerance, and its effect is the perpetuation of informal practices.
Now we will explore one of the key causes of corruption in the Philippines, cultural tolerance. This cultural aspect allows practices like patronage and utang na loob, otherwise known as debt of gratitude, to normalize corrupt behaviors in our society. As noted by Edna Estefania A. Co., this tolerance manifests in everyday life, which corrupt acts often serving as a survival mechanism to navigate public bureaucracies, embedding corruption into daily societal transactions. The effect of this cultural tolerance is the perpetuation of informal practices, where corrupt behaviors become deeply ingrained, making efforts to promote transparency and accountability challenging.
According to the anti-corruption community, while corruption is often viewed as a government or development issue, in the Philippines, it is more of a social structure. The very social bonds that foster civic unity are also effective at maintaining and spreading corruption. Patrons use these societal features to implement a pervasive structure of corruption through maneuvered friendships, making it difficult for the masses to distinguish between friend and foe. This social structure infiltrates every aspect of society, including government and development systems, which is why sector-based anti-corruption efforts often underperform. For initiatives to be effective, they must address this entrenched social structure. Cultural tolerance for corruption in the Philippines is deeply rooted in societal norms and values, making it one of the most persistent drivers of corruption. Practices such as patronage and utang na loob are ingrained in Filipino culture, where personal relationships often supersede legal or ethical considerations. This creates a system where favors rather than merit influence decisions in both public and private sectors. According to Edna Estefania, ACO, this type of corruption becomes embedded in daily life, as people see it as a necessary means to navigate bureaucratic inefficiencies.
Furthermore, corruption is not merely seen as an institutional issue, but rather as a social structure. This structure encompasses both formal and informal networks of power, where the same bonds that foster community loyalty and cooperation are used to sustain corrupt practices. Patrons or people in positions of power leverage these societal relationships to maintain control, often blurring the lines between personal loyalty and professional integrity. This makes it difficult for individuals to challenge corruption as they fear losing social or economic support from those in power. As a result, informal practices such as bribery, favoritism, and cronyism persist because they are seen as a part of the social fabric, not just violations of the law. This embeddedness of corruption means that anti corruption efforts focused solely on institutional reform are often insufficient. The social structure that upholds corruption must be addressed. The challenge lies in dismantling the very relationships that bind communities, as these same bonds are exploited to perpetuate corruption. Without tackling the cultural roots of this issue, efforts to combat corruption will remain superficial, leading to underperformance in anti corruption initiatives.
In essence, cultural tolerance for corruption creates a vicious cycle where informal practices become the norm, making it difficult for meaningful reform to take hold. It explains why corruption is so difficult to eliminate, as it is not just a legal issue, but a deeply entrenched social reality.
Let's now turn our attention to Diane Loceno and Allyana Roraldo, who will address our second cause and effect, highlighting how oligarchy gives rise to political monopoly, impacting our political landscape.
Discuss a critical aspect of corruption that is found in the Philippines, focusing on its deep roots and an oligarchic structure that fosters a cycle of political monopoly. Corruption in the Philippines is profoundly linked to the oligarchic framework within our governance. As highlighted by Raymond A. Avria, oligarchy and clan corruption flourishes particularly in environments of political and economic liberalizations coupled with weak institutions. This dynamic creates a disorderly stronghold among oligarchs, leading to blurred lines between public service and personal gain. In this oligarchic system, political families dominate governance, wielding a significant influence that allows them to advance their business interests while neglecting the pressing needs of the populace. The 2021 Corruption Perceptions Index reflects that this troubling reality as the Philippines ranked 116th out of 180 countries, scoring a mere 33 out of 100. Such statistics underscore our country's troubling status as one of the most corrupt nations globally. Well, historically, the Marcos regime serves as a prime example of how oligarchs can leverage political power for personal gain. Political dynasties have maintained their grip on power, stifling competition and operating with impunity. The implications of this corruption are stark. The Office of the Ombudsman reports losses of approximately 100 million pesos daily due to corrupt practices. And the World Bank estimates that these losses amount to one-fifth of our national budget. Notably, former Deputy Ombudsman Cyril Ramos emphasized that between 2017 and 2018, the Philippines lost around 1.4 trillion pesos due to these corrupt activities. The effects of oligarchic corruption extend beyond mere financial loss. They severely undermine our democracy and marginalize ordinary citizens. This pervasive lack of accountability fosters an environment where corruption can flourish unchecked, further entrenching the oligarchic rule. Now, I'll hand over the discussion to Allyana Roraldo, who will elaborate further on the connection between oligarchy and political monopoly in our country.
Thank you, Diane. As Diane mentioned, the widespread corruption in the Philippines can largely be tracked back to the dominance of a few powerful families or oligarchies, which is the root cause of political monopolies. Researchers Teresa S. Encarnacion Tadam and Eduardo C. Tadam from the University of the Philippines point out that political dynasties plays a major role in the monopoly. In fact, in 2013, 74% of elected members of the House of Representatives came from dynastic families. This concentration of power among a small group of families means political decisions often serve the interest of the elite, fueling a cycle of patronage and worsening corruption. The effect of this political monopoly are serious. First, it leads to poor governance where policies benefits a few powerful individuals rather than addressing the needs of the broader public. This hinders social and economic progress. Moreover, the system limits accountability, allowing corrupt practices to flourish without consequences as those in power become shielded from oversight. Political monopolies also weaken civil society by silencing opposition and co-opting potential challengers. This stifles the development of a healthy political landscape and pushes aside opposing viewpoints. As a result, the interests of privileged few are prioritized over the needs of the majority, further widening economic and social inequality. In conclusion, entanglement of oligarchy and political monopoly creates a cycle of corruption that seriously weakens democratic governance in the Philippines. Addressing these core issues is essential to building a more just and accountable political system. Thank you.
Miguel Nazario and Philip Gonzalez will analyze the third cause and effect, focusing on how the absence of transparency fosters an environment of increased impunity in governance.
Today, we want to shed light on a pressing issue that plagues our nation: the profound lack of transparency in governance and its devastating effect on the rise of impunity in the Philippines. This relationship is crucial to understand as we strive for justice and accountability in our society.
In recent years, the Philippines has struggled with the glaring lack of transparency, particularly within the realms of government and law enforcement. According to Transparency International, the Philippines ranked 129 for corruption out of the 183 countries surveyed in 2021, reflecting a constant issue that undermines public trust. The Philippines received a dismal score of 2.6 out of 10 in the Corruption Perception Index, indicating that corruption remains a widespread in both private and public sectors. This lack of transparency is not merely a statistic. It also represents the heroism of accountability and trust in our institutions. As highlighted in reports, the Duterte administration's focus on maintaining a narrative of success that often comes at the expense of honest governments. The Philippines Human Rights Information Center noted that the lack of transparency in the administration's anti-drug campaign created a hostile environment, making it challenging for victims to seek justice. The absence of clear information on police operations not only obscured the truth, but also perpetuated a culture where accountability was sacrificed for perceived effectiveness.
The implications of this lack of transparency are dire. When citizens cannot access reliable information about government actions, it breeds a sense of hopelessness and disillusionment. The lack of accountability emboldens law enforcement to operate without fear of scrutiny, leading to an increase in impunity. This has been evident in the staggering number of extrajudicial killings under the guise of police operations where suspects are executed without due process. The culture of silence surrounding these actions discourages victims' families from seeking justice, as the state's failure to provide transparency translates into a failure to uphold their rights. The Philippine National Police, operating in an environment devoid of oversight, have increasingly resorted to violence, believing they can act with impunity. This vicious cycle perpetuates the very issue we seek to eradicate. To combat this growing impunity, we must address the core issue, the lack of transparency. Implementing measures that promote openness in government dealings, including independent oversight of law enforcement activities, is essential. The civil society, media, and ordinary citizens must advocate for reforms that demand accountability at all levels of government. As history has shown, transparency is not just a moral imperative, it is a necessary condition for justice and stability. By fostering a culture of openness, we can begin to rebuild trust between the government and the public, ensuring that every citizen feels safe in seeking justice.
In conclusion, the lack of transparency in the Philippines serves as a breeding ground for impunity, enabling law enforcement to operate without accountability. This relationship possesses a significant threat to our democracy and the rule of law. As we move forward, let us tackle the cause of transparency, for it is the foundation upon which we can build a more just and equitable society. Thank you.
In summary, our group, which includes Andrei Osada, Jiro Gedang, Diane Loceno, Allyana Roraldo, Miguel Nazario, and Phil Gonzalez, has discussed the pressing issue of corruption in the Philippines, focusing on its causes and effects. We identified three major causes: cultural tolerance, oligarchy, lack of transparency, each contributing to the normalization of corrupt practices, political monopoly, and increased impunity, respectively. To combat these issues effectively, several actions can be taken. First, addressing cultural tolerance by promoting public awareness campaigns to educate citizens on the negative impacts of corruption and the importance of ethical behavior, and encourage community initiatives that foster transparency and accountability, making it socially unacceptable to engage in corrupt practices. Secondly, dismantling oligarchic structures by implement electoral reforms to reduce the influence of political dynasties and promote fair competition in politics, and strengthen institutions to ensure they are less susceptible to oligarchic control, fostering a more equitable political landscape. And lastly, enhance transparency by establish independent oversight bodies to monitor government actions and law enforcement activities. Advocate for laws that requires transparency in government dealings, ensuring that citizens have access to reliable information regarding public service and operations. As a group, we can contribute to these solutions in several ways. First, we can recognize community forums to raise awareness about corruption and its effects, encouraging dialogue and collective action. Second, conduct research on best practices for combating corruption and share findings with the public to inform and empower citizens. And lastly, collaborate with civil society organizations, media, and local government units to promote transparency and accountability initiatives. By addressing the root causes of corruption and actively contributing to solutions, we can work towards a more transparent, accountable, and equitable society in the Philippines. That would be all. Thank you.